Right now, as you read these words, a voice is saying them back to you. You didn't choose to turn it on. You can't seem to turn it off. It has been narrating your entire life, and you have never once heard it out loud. That voice is you. But where did it come from? Every day you argue with yourself in the shower. You rehearse conversations that haven't happened yet. You scold yourself for a mistake from 10 years ago in a voice that sounds exactly like your own. This happens so constantly that you barely notice it anymore. But the story behind that voice is far stranger than you think. It starts, oddly enough, with children who talk to themselves out loud. If you've ever watched a toddler play alone, you've probably heard it. A running commentary. I put the block here. Now the red one goes on top. Oops! No one taught them to do this. They just do it. For decades, psychologists assumed this was meaningless noise, a kind of overflow from a developing brain. Then a Russian psychologist named Lev Vygotsky looked closer. Vygotsky proposed something radical for his time. He argued that this out-loud chatter wasn't noise at all. It was thinking. Children, he said, first learn to solve problems by talking to adults around them. Slowly, that outside guidance gets copied inward. The child starts repeating the adult's words to themselves, out loud, as a tool to direct their own behavior. Over years, the voice doesn't disappear. It just goes quiet. It moves from the mouth to the mind. In other words, before you could think silently, you had to learn to think out loud. Your inner voice isn't something you were born with. It's something you built, using the voices of everyone who ever spoke to you as a child. That should already feel strange. But it gets stranger, because your inner voice isn't actually one continuous stream. It only feels that way. A modern researcher named Russell Hurlburt spent years trying to answer a simple question: what is actually happening inside people's heads at any given moment? His method was almost comically low-tech. He gave people a beeper. At random intervals throughout the day, it would go off, and the person had to immediately write down exactly what was in their mind the instant before the beep. The results surprised almost everyone, including Hurlburt himself. Inner speech, it turns out, is not constant. Many people go long stretches with no verbal thought at all, just images, emotions, or nothing they can describe. Others talk to themselves almost non-stop. The inner voice isn't a fixed narrator running 24 hours a day. It switches on and off differently in every single person, and most of us have no idea how much it varies until someone forces us to check. So if your inner voice comes and goes, what is it actually for? This is where a British psychologist named Charles Fernyhough enters the story. Fernyhough has spent much of his career studying inner speech using brain scans, and what he found lines up almost perfectly with Vygotsky's old theory. When people talk to themselves silently, the same brain regions light up as when they talk out loud. Your brain doesn't fully distinguish between speaking and thinking inwards. Silent inner speech is, neurologically, a whisper your body chooses not to let out. Fernyhough also found something else. Inner speech isn't always full, grammatical sentences. Often it's condensed, fragmented. A single loaded word can carry the weight of an entire argument you already had with yourself. Your inner voice, in other words, speaks in shorthand, because it's talking to someone who already knows exactly what you mean, you, which raises an uncomfortable question. If your inner voice is built from a lifetime of other people's words, whose voice is actually in there? Think about it. When you criticize yourself after a failure, does the tone sound familiar? For many people, it does. It echoes a parent, a teacher, a coach, someone who once spoke to them in exactly that tone, at exactly that pitch of disappointment. You absorbed it so early and so thoroughly that it now feels like it's simply you. It isn't background noise. It's inherited. This matters more than it might seem, because of what a psychologist named Ethan Kross discovered about how your inner voice can actively work against you. Kross studies something he calls chatter, the anxious, looping, self-focused inner speech that spirals during stress. Under his research, when people are asked to talk through a problem using I, as in I'm worried I'll fail this, they tend to spiral deeper into anxiety. But when people are asked to describe the exact same problem using their own name or you, something shifts. You're worried you'll fail this, but you've handled worse. The distress measurably drops. Just a pronoun. That's the entire difference. Swap I for your own name, and your brain starts treating your inner voice less like a trapped passenger and more like a co.